Alright, YouTube, the epic heat wave continues. This is normally the average frost date for Vermont, and it's like 85 degrees out today. It's not going to get below 60, 65 tonight. It's just wonderful. I can't believe it, and it's supposed to continue for the next week or two. So I think it's going to be a short, fairly mild winter this year, honestly. Probably a late autumn. Maybe we won't have a frost till Halloween. It'd be great. Go out trick-or-treating, and it's still there's still some leaves on some of the trees. But anyway, the election is heating up even more than the weather is right now. You saw, by now you have to have seen it because nobody wants to fucking talk about anything else. Daddy Bush, Herbert Walker Incarnate, says he's going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, what more evidence do we need that there's some collusion there? People said early on in this election, and I think Herbert Walker's trying to be helpful here, they said no more Bushes, no more Clintons. And what happened? Of course, Jeb got his ass beat in the primaries. He wanted South Carolina in order to stay in. That was his strategy. Ted Cruz, of course, shows up. He's competing for the South. Donald Trump takes advantage of that. He wins. Jeb gets screwed. He's, out fairly early. He didn't stand a chance. Now he's reduced to making, comedy appearances as himself in sort of that, hey, I was a presidential candidate and lost big time sort of mode. It's very sad. It's very cringeworthy. Everyone still remembers the Please Clap episode or the Turtles thing with Jeb. It's just, it was really sad. But they also said no more Clintons. Now, Hillary, of course, became the Democratic nominee, largely because she ran unopposed. Her one actual opponent, her serious opponent, was completely fucked by the DNC. Everybody realizes it. So I think that Herbert Walker is trying to make it easier for people. The Bushes aren't liked anymore by the Republicans because they see W as a failure, which he was. Herbert Walker was a failure. He was. He was a one-term disaster. His son barely won a second term and led us down the most disastrous fiscal road we could possibly think of, as well as getting us involved in several more unending wars for profit, along with Dick Cheney and all the others. I find it funny. Once again, as before with, the Bushes refusing to back Trump, Salon and Being Liberal and all of these people applauded it at the time and said, oh, well, that's because they have common sense. Now, these are the same Bushes that not a few years ago you were saying were responsible for literally every ill in the country. Now, when you said that so many years ago, you might have been correct, because indeed, any reasonable person, I think, looking at the disastrous two Bush presidencies we've been through, realizes, no, at the very best, they were well below average presidents. A more reasonable reading of, and more reasonable analysis of their actual time, respectively as Commander-in-Chief and Commander-in-Chief, is that they were unmitigated disasters for this country. Economically, socially, certainly are standing on the world stage. Obama campaigned on, hey, I've got to clean up W's mess. And now W's dad, who wasn't even good enough to win a second term, and got himself smashed in by Bill Clinton, no less, is backing Hillary Clinton. I don't think they realize the irony in that the same people that they spent, in many cases, over a decade demonizing every single day as responsible for literally every problem in the country under the sun. War, Bushes are responsible. Fiscal failure, it's the Bushes. Presence on the world stage diminished, or warmongering or interventionist in foreign affairs, Bush's fault. Government secrecy originates with Bush. Literally everything is W or W's dad to them. And yet they're happy about the fact that the Bushes appear to be supporting Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is astonishing to me. It's very, very funny. It shows the corporate collusion within establishment politics more than anything else. This is what Trump has been talking about through most of the campaign. Now, I didn't care about that very early on. I still care less about it than simply observing this. People said, no more dynastic bullcrap. The Bushes have already been in office. They were failures. The Clintons have already been in the White House. Bubba Bill at best was an average president. We need something new. The Clintonian neoliberal policies may have kind of worked in the 90s. We're in a different world now. They're not going to work now. We need some new thinking. And so part of that bargain, 50% of it, has been upheld. There will be no more Bushes in the White House. It's not going to happen. They've been completely tarnished. We had a one-term disaster, a two-term disaster, a disastrous presidential candidate who never got the nomination. They are dead as a dynastic movement. They will never return, I believe, to significant U.S. politics. We can hope that the same will hold true with the Clintons. You do not have to like Donald Trump. I myself have said multiple times, I am not a strong supporter of Trump. I've endorsed him because the alternative is worse and because the Libertarian Party apparently lost its footing, abandoned libertarian principles. I am a libertarian. I can't support Gary Johnson. He's arguably going down the route towards being more authoritarian than his competitors in some ways. He's abandoned about half of the actual Libertarian Party's stated goals, and it makes no sense to me. That being said, my switch of support to Trump isn't because I think Trump is a great candidate. It's not because I think he's the magic fix-it-all that will make everything magically better. It's not because I'm taken in by his charisma, which is admittedly there, and his coherence, which is admittedly there. It's not because I think that he will do a masterful job. It's because I think he will do a far better job than his competitor, and because I still hold to that ethos that I held to at the very beginning. There was no way I was going to support somebody who was a Bush or representative of Bush neoconservatism, because that movement doesn't work. We've seen it in action for several decades. It doesn't work for the working class. It doesn't work for small businesses. It doesn't work for our presence overseas. It doesn't keep us safer. It doesn't make us more free. It does the opposite of all of these things. But the other end is still in action. The Democratic nominee is a Clinton. I couldn't support, by the way, O'Malley. Or that other dude, the old guy who was sort of a laughingstock. Jim Webb was tolerable. Rand Paul was just fine. Bernie Sanders, even though his economic beliefs are absolute trash, at the very least was a more sensible alternative to Hillary Clinton. At the very least, he departed from neoliberalism. I think it's a step up from neoliberalism. If as long as he's honest enough to say, yeah, I'm a socialist. Sellout, okay. Hypocrite, yeah. Unwilling to actually wage a campaign because his opponent might call him sexist, sure. Yeah, a little bit cowardly. But I can understand why those that backed him largely haven't backed Clinton, and neither can I. I can't vote for Hillary Clinton. It's impossible for me to do because we've already seen what neoliberalism can do to our economy. You look at Obama, or you look at the Bubba Bill days, and it's just as warmongering as when we've been under Republican leadership. The economy does just as badly as it does under Republican leadership. Everything about society crumbles at the same rate that it does under Republican leadership. It took two parties to create the fiscal disaster that hit us at the end of the Bush presidency and extending into the first 2 years of Obama's first term. It took two parties to build the police state apparatus. It took two parties to build domestic surveillance. Trump is offering what I at first classed as too mild a variant of reform. I still do. I think he's not going far enough in some of these ways. That's why I backed Johnson for months there. I said, yeah, I'll back the Libertarian Party until they made it clear that they were the new Democratic Party, and the Democrats made it clear that they were the new Whig Party, which is basically what they've become. They've become vestigial. The public discourse has moved beyond the realm of what neoliberalism can address. It's also moving beyond neoconservatism. Now, Trump is not a neoconservative on many issues. He fuses populism and nativism together. He's a little bit of a paleocon. His tax code speaks to this, I think. And I class that as a mild form of reform. But because the libertarian movement is now being led by somebody who's not a libertarian, because the Green Party is completely inept and not even really running a campaign at this point other than a form of Jello Biafra-style satire, and because Hillary Clinton is Hillary Clinton, there's literally nobody else for me to support. It's not possible for me to find anybody else unless I want to cast a protest vote for Harambe, D's Nuts, or Vermin Supreme, or perhaps Mickey Mouse, or write in my own name, or something along those lines. Donald Trump is not a Clinton. He's also not a Bushite Republican. In fact, I think he's a fusion of the two parties themselves. He's been a Democrat in spirit before. The Republicans attempted to chastise him on this token, and it was very funny to see the same groups that are now, they're all backing Clinton, of course, The same groups that originally tried to foster an environment where Trump would be called too liberal so that he wouldn't win the nomination are now saying he's the next Adolf Hitler, that he's a reactionary, far-right, literal, not way beyond neocon. He's like a David Duke-style conservative or something like that, which just isn't the case. And if you look at what he's actually saying, I think that you'll find that out. But when I see Herbert Walker Bush, again, a one-term disaster, puked on the Japanese prime minister. When I see him backing Hillary Clinton, it doesn't speak well about Hillary Clinton. It's almost like a poison pill endorsement when you think about it. It's not helpful to her because the people who support her, I can't imagine most of them respect the Bush family. They're still remembering, in many cases, their economic situation is still reeling from the economic bullcrap that George W. put us through. Or one of their loved ones has a limb blown off in war because of what W did. Or because of what Herbert Walker did with the Persian Gulf invasion or something like that. Two Bushes, both getting us involved in the same region. I think they're banking on Hillary because they think she'll start a ground war in Syria and let them go back in and once again make more money off of oil or something like that. Maybe they smell more money in it for them or something like that. So that's the real reason why they would be backing her. The Bushes would. Jeb hasn't spoken up, of course. I wouldn't expect him to do so. But for Herbert Walker, I think this also speaks to the fact that Hillary Clinton really is a Republican circa the 1980s or 1990s. Just like Bill Clinton was. I pointed out in a previous video. Bill Clinton took Reaganite fiscal policies, essentially, Reaganism light, combined them with a little bit more police state, a little bit more taxation, and brandished it as a liberal-style message, which it never was, even though the Republicans took the bait hook, line, and sinker under old Newt, who was a moron then and seems slightly smarter, I guess, now with his age. Increased age has increased Newt's wisdom. Before, of course, he was more easily fooled, I suppose, back when he was in Congress. After two disastrous presidential bids, of course, he knows better, I guess, these days or something like that. The Bushes and Clintons are basically the same thing. Bubba Bill didn't have a liberal message. He certainly wasn't a socialist. He was essentially just a Reaganite counterpart who happened to be younger and well-spoken, and he could sell that message. And it was the same stuff that the Republicans at the time were offering. It's just Herbert Walker was not as coherent. He wasn't able to pitch, hey, I'm the standard bearer of Reagan. No, Bubba Bill was the one that did that. He just didn't give Reagan credit for it. Look at what he did over in the former Yugoslav states, and you'll see the nation building. You'll see the rudiments of the modern warmongering situation that we're in today. There's a reason why all those Serbians are chanting, yeah, hail Trump or something like that. It's not because they're evil Nazis. It's not because they're horrible reactionary scum. It's because they remember what Bubba Bill did to them. The Haitians are saying the same thing now. So, yeah. Herbert Walker basically endorses Hillary Clinton. I'm sure that this will win her many more votes among independents because everyone knows how beloved the Bushes are among independent voters. I would caution people to think about this and think about why a multi-million-dollar neocon warmonger would back the multi-million-dollar neolib warmonger. And they will probably understand why that is because it's pretty thinly veiled. It makes a whole lot of sense right on the surface. That's about all. Peace out.